Hello everyone, today I have on my bench the famous ZX Spectrum 128 Toastrack model. Of course, this is not the official name of the product. It was Project Derby for Sinclair back in '85. That was the year actually introduced, but only in Spain back then. Introduced to the Great Britain in '86, and that was because there were so many unsold Spectrum Plus models until that day. So Sir Clive thought that he should wait a bit before it hits the markets in the UK. This is my latest acquisition, and I'm happy for this. This is quite a rare model. Um, Moreover, because it's still in its box. So let's take a deeper look. Inside the box, the styrofoam uh, internal box in pretty good shape, with this big popular Sinclair logo in the center there. And here we have the machine with a couple of cables for the tape player. You can see that this machine is actually a ZX Spectrum Plus with this huge heatsink on the side, thus the nickname Toastrack. The Sinclair logo in red, and let's take a look at the back. Yeah, it was made in the UK. There was a counterpart in Spain back then, and it was Investronica, if I can say this right. And they have produced their own ZX Spectrum 128K for the local markets. You could tell the difference only by the white logo instead of red. And here we have the mains adapter at 1.85 amps, similar to the ZX Spectrum Plus, and a couple of cables from the player, yeah, and the RF cable for the TV. So what is missing is the manual and the introductory tape. Apart from that, I can consider this boxed item as complete. At the back side we can see the classic UHF TV modulator, the RGB. Wow, that was nice. DIN port and the 9 volts DC, plus the expansion port, of course. What is missing compared to the ZX Spectrum Plus? What do you think it is? It is the couple of jacks for loading and saving games, which are right here on the side, along with the serial RS-232 port, which is another good feature coming with this machine. And the classic reset button is there, as it used to be and initially introduced with the ZX Spectrum Plus. It doesn't look like we're gonna have a steady signal now that I have powered this machine up, but it looks like there is something that is there. So it means that somehow this is alive. Let's open it up and check inside. It was almost certain after all these years that there would be damage to the keyboard ribbons. And this one, the narrow one, is cut and stuck inside the connector. Look at this. Look at this. Hopefully I can work around this, because this is just a little piece of the ribbon, so I can take off this extra white plastic and put it back again. But before we do this and deal with keyboard, first step is to take a good glance over the motherboard in case we spot anything like a burned out component or something suspicious. This is always the first step. An observation. This guy here, 7805, is one of the suspects if something goes wrong. And yeah, we have to take a look around the discrete components. I can see no damage, no obvious damage so far, so step 1 looks good. In general, it is a good practice to get to know the location of the components. Right here we have at the bottom the bank of RAM chips and the General Instruments 3-channel Sound AY chip. Up there is a coil, and the processor, the ROM, and the ULA sits on the right there in the center, just above the RAM chips. And yeah, let's move to step 2, which is taking actual measurements from the circuit. So first we pick up a spot where we can place the negative and take the ground, connect it to our multi-tester, and check the output of the 7805, which gives us 5 volt as it should be. So far so good. And those 5 volts are circulating around the whole board. So there are some measurements we can take from other components like the ICs and some of the capacitors like this one over here, which also should give us 5 or 9 in this case volts. And then we can continue the next one and the next one, and then move to the 5 volts rail, which goes to the memory. Again, there are no chips inside here to need 12 volts like the old Spectrum, so we're looking for 5 and 9, and I guess this is what we have so far. 5 volts on the rail for the memory bank. So since everything looks good, we can try to start looking for more simple things that could give us trouble with the picture here. Just for the record, we're taking the measurement from the coil, but since we have 9 volts already identified around the circuit, it was absolutely certain that it would be okay. So one other thing we can check among these little simple things is the frequency coil onto the modulator. Maybe it needs some kind of adjustment here, and we have to gently move it around and see. This was off channel 36, and now somehow we have a picture because it was in the wrong position. So it was that simple. And then we can see the 1986 now Sinclair Richards on the screen. So it was something, again, very simple, since the voltage was okay around the circuit, and it was just that. Now all we have to do is to twist it around and see what is the best picture we can get. In this case, very gently, of course. We don't want to break it or anything, and I guess this one now we have the best picture so far, so I'm gonna leave it right there. And start looking at the option and the ways I can fix the keyboard, since we have a working machine and the signal is great. So yeah, just let me get on this. So this little piece of the ribbon was cut again. Just to remind you, I have removed this white thick plastic that hold it right, and I'm gonna create a new connection. I'm gonna put it back to the remaining part and straighten it up and try to create a new connection. So we need some glue on this white thick plastic, and we gotta straight up with a pair of scissors like this. I'm gonna cut it just a bit, just a little bit, to make it straight, and put the plastic back to the new edge and create a new edge connection for the motherboard. And so there it is. We have the plastic glued up at the back, and the ribbon connections can be further cleaned with some pencil eraser. The classic way to do this after many years in service might be dirty. I'm gonna do the very same to the next the other ribbon as well, and try to put it back in its final position into the connectors of the motherboard and see what happens. And I hope we can play some games tonight. Now it's time to put everything back together with no screws. This is something I strongly suggest during first initial tests. After some operation, some repair, just try not to put every screw before you are absolutely sure that everything works. Like in this case, I'm playing around with the cursor keys for the selection menu, and I can see that it was a great fix, temporarily fixed, to be honest, because I'm gonna order a new membrane, of course, but at least we can play around with the keys for a little while, picking up the basic now, and I can reset it and try to pick the loader, and maybe we can load some game. I have no mono cassette player, but I should try to load a game with my mobile phone and see what happens. And so I'm gonna be using Tap Dancer, this application, in my mobile phone with some images of games which this thing's turning to sound. I have connected this to the Spectrum using a stereo cable, which is not good, but this is the only one I have on the side to the ear jack. And let's see if we can load a game and celebrate a bit tonight over this successful well, semi-repair, or it was just an adjustment, so that we have a fully working ZX Spectrum 128 by the end of the day. So let's see. Well, I cannot see any games loading, although this virtual tape player is sending out the sound to the ear. I guess this is the problem, the stereo jack that I have connected to the ear jack of the Spectrum. It needs to be the mono type of jack, not the stereo type. And if I do so using the Spectrum standard cables, then I cannot get anything coming from the mobile phone. So it's not suitable, not compatible, not right to do it this way. I should try to get myself some old school cassette player. Sorry to say, but I don't have any at this point in time. So in any case, I will call it a wrap. I'm glad we fixed this. It was not much of a fix, but more like an adjustment. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks again. Bye.